Many thanks for staying tuned. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. Now, the ongoing global tariff war has different meanings to different people, especially the disputes, trade disputes amongst the U.S., the China, and the European Union. And this, of course, can be seen to be escalating if certain issues are not taken into cognizance, especially from the U.S. President Donald Trump. And like we said before the break, we also particularly like the fact that some countries of the world, especially China, are also standing up to the U.S. President this time round. And let's see where this will lead Donald Trump in days to come. But what exactly are the effects of the ongoing tariff war? Not only on those countries, but also on the consumers, because again, sometimes the consumers would get to bear the brunt of all of these issues. We do have a guest in the house this morning. He's one who's also very vast when it comes to international issues. We have Lukemon Owolabi here in the studio with us. Thank you so much for being here on the program today.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
And I know that anytime we talk about Donald Trump, he is one man that I'm sure you know. you already said, you know, a second coming will bring too many problems on the global economy, and that is what we're seeing at the moment. But for you, if you look at when this started and when the imposition started, before it even started with China, it had tossed the coin onto Canada, and it had tossed the coin onto Britain, even though it was at a minimal level. But then everyone thought, okay, maybe he was going to sheath the swords when he regarding China, but he went the full hog, and you know they didn't even allow it to get cold before China retaliated immediately, and now back and forth we keep having this back and forth. But for you, what do you think? Because again, it's going to be difficult to get into Donald Trump's mind, because it looks like his mind is just in a turmoil, and sometimes he just likes to cause controversies where there shouldn't be. But for you, is it possible to find a meaning into why this is coming at such a time?
Well, Donald Trump is a disruptor.
Oh, God.
You know, that is his persona, that's his character. He doesn't do things ordinarily. You know, remember the show he used to have, the reality show, and say, regardless of who you are, I'll tell you are fired, and that's it. And he just loves to ruffle feathers sometimes.
I mean,
he's not, he is. He's not someone that will just sit and do things normally. So when you have Donald Trump, you know that you have controversy on your hand. And sometimes if you don't know where you are going, everywhere seems to be the way. When he started, it's not the first time. He did it the first time too, when he imposed tariffs on some nations, particularly China. And China had to negotiate, you know, because at that time, in 2008, China, the total exports of China to the U.S. was about 19.8% of their total exports of China. 19.8 goes to the U.S. But now, China has scaled down their exports, you know, to the U.S. It's probably now about 10%. So China did not just scale up; it was planned.
Right. It was deliberate.
Deliberate. So they know what they're doing. They knew this one
was going to come.
You know, they knew it was going to come. So they were ready for it. So they prepared for it. And it cannot be easy for the U.S., you know, because it probably even thought we are in the 1950s, you know, where America was all-powerful. Everybody wants to trade with America. They have a comparative advantage over many countries. But now, most of the countries, in fact, I'm sure that even Donald Trump does not know that
the impact
of what he has done. Many countries of the world now have something that they can use as leverage against the United States. So he probably did not know. That's why he had to, you know,
The 90
quickly,
days.
quickly
say, let
withdraw.
us pause this. But I must be seen to be doing something. So let me do something to China. So he probably didn't think that, he thought it was going to be like in 2018, so that China had to negotiate. But this time around, China gave it back. And Xi Jinping said, we are not afraid, you know, because they know what they have done. I mean, it's, the U.S. needs a lot of items from China. In fact, the U.S. imports about 536 categories of items from China alone. China, the U.S. depends on China for their rare earth commodities,
right,
which are largely used in the, you know, in military, industrial complex and the rest of it. So for about 70%. And so for you to want to face China this time, it's, you probably don't know what they have done, but the, you know, quintessential Trump would just want to do something.
Right.
And don't be surprised when tomorrow Donald Trump says, come, Xi Jinping, let's negotiate. You know, because that's the whole essence of this. Let us negotiate, let us do something. And when you see the impact on the consumers,
right,
particularly those who bring in the goods from the U.S., I mean, you can imagine.
From China.
I mean, that's why I also had to step down the, you know, tech imports. Yeah, the iPhones, the computers, the semiconductors, because they depend largely on China for it. So you have to step all that down. You can imagine a company like Apple produces about 80% of their phones in China. So you can imagine if they put 100 and something % tariff on that. Definitely, it's a direct tax on the person that is importing. But the effect will go somewhere. It will be on consumers. So it is the consumers that will now shout.
Yeah.
And that can bring a lot of pressure on the U.S. itself, on the government. So they are trying to look at what is happening. So it's like a rule of the thumb. Let us see what will happen here. You know, so if it goes bad, we'll reverse it. You know, so it's like a trial and error, you know, situation for Trump now. And I think probably in the next few weeks, he's going to call everything off and said, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve, which is nothing.
Which is nothing.
From your narration just now, it's appearing like the supremacy battle is between China and the US. And if Trump or America should continue this way without finding a meeting point to meet China, what are the likely consequences for the American economy and the world at large?
You see, if it goes on like this, it's probably going to affect the consumers in America more. Because most of the items that China imports from America are mainly agricultural products, you know, poultry, soybeans. I mean, China buys about 50% of what America produces in terms of soybeans. About 10% of their poultry goes to China.
Right.
But they can always find
alternatives
for that. America cannot find alternatives for what is
they are currently
what
crying over the price of eggs.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you can imagine that. And that is within, they are the producers, yet they are crying. You know, because of sometimes it's about the input. In fact, most of the inputs are produced in America, yet, you know, that's basically inflation.
Right.
You know, it's affecting everybody, every country all over the world. That's inflation. So you can imagine when they now add this to it.
Oh my.
Then we probably will be talking about depression.
Huh.
Oh yes, that is where we're going. If Trump does not step back and say, okay,
China,
let us negotiate. And at the end of the day, you'll go back to status quo. So now ask yourself, so all the dramas what was it
all
for?
about?
But it's quintessential Trump.
Yeah, but
It has
Trump will
to-
tell you it's in the interest of America.
Yeah, everything.
America
is in the
first.
Everything
Yes.
is in the interest of America. Even depression is in the interest of America.
Well, for a lot of people who, again, do not understand what this tariff war is all about, and they will keep wondering, okay, yes, tariff, and then so is China, America, Canada,
what's the
so
big
what is
deal?
it? So what role does tariff really play in global trade?
Okay, really, the tariff is actually a direct tax. It's a tax like import duty.
right.
Like import duty is a tax. So, but what makes a tariff different is that they use it for economic and political purpose most of the time, to protect the local industry. If you are producing steel in America and China can produce steel cheaper than what is available in America, many people will prefer to buy the cheaper variant. So instead of people to now go for the cheaper variant, which is from China, that means importing from China
Into US.
to US, they will now impose tariff to make that one more expensive. So those who are looking up to China for imports of steel, for instance, will now look back and say, okay, maybe we have people that are producing locally, and this is cheaper, cheaper than what we can. That is how they protect the local industries. Unfortunately for America, they do not have the infrastructure, for manufacturing. And the problem is that for decades now, they have not invested in infrastructure. So, and there is no way that you can replace decades of lost infrastructure by tax. So it has to be programmed. You see, the future is planned. It is not imported. So you can't do this with tax. It has to be a plan. Because over the years, America left manufacturing and went into tech. And most of their tech companies are making a lot of money, and but they left manufacturing, they outsourced it. That's why China, Japan and the rest of them they said they were going to China because of cheap labor. And that China has now scaled up. They've left the era of cheap labor. They are now very equipped. They have millions of people who are into tech,
Right.
who are into vocational studies, who are into the act of tooling. They are now very good. They are now experts in tooling because they built the industry, they built capacity. So if you say tooling experts, like someone said, if you want to see tooling experts, if you call a meeting of tooling experts now in America, they can barely fill a room. But when you call a meeting of tooling experts in China, they can fill football fields.
Right.
That's how they have scaled up. And it was deliberate. And they were doing it. You remember when they used to bring stuff from China, say, China and Nikon last. It happened to Japan too. But they were building capacity with it. They will look at what you have, they will break it down and try to improve on it. That's how they scaled up. So they're now better than everybody now in the world. China is number one now in manufacturing in the world because they had a deliberate program to tool up, and they have the skills. They have the human materials
That's why they're
to
everywhere.
do it. That's why they are everywhere now, because they tooled up, they scaled up, and that is what America does not have.
Okay.
So if they want to have that now, they have to begin the process all over again.
Okay, so what kind of opportunities does this tariff war provide for other countries to develop their own economy and, of course, look for allies elsewhere as against America? And during these 90 days pause, what kind of negotiation or deliberation do you think should be going on?
You don't go too far. They are not deliberating, they are not negotiating. The issue is he wanted to impose tariff, then he saw that, look, these people are most of the countries are scaled up. And they also have leverage against them. They know that if Canada, for instance, can say, okay, we are supplying you power in some areas. We're also imposing tariff on it. So those people, the consumers in America, will also suffer.
True.
So it's not as if when you come out and say, I'm going to impose tariff, everybody will start crying and say, I'm begging. So it's no longer like that. That's why he had to pause. So countries all over the world have also scaled up. So he now discovered that very little. Even from 2018 till now, things have changed a lot.
Right.
When they started in 2019, the exports of China to America was 19.8%. Now it's about 10%. They are scaling down. And that's what will happen to many other countries. China, Japan, and South Korea, they held their first bilateral talks in 5 years. They are now trying to say, oh, what can we do
Together.
China is having a meeting with Vietnam, Cambodia, and one other country. They are now saying, look, we can do a lot around here. And all those countries are countries that normally export to the US. So they are now looking for alternative markets. Even Europe, the EU, is now having talks with China.
Right.
And these are, I mean, that bloc, the European bloc, was what America was using before to decouple China.
Right.
Now they are talking. So everything is changing around the US. Whether the US steps back and says, we are not doing again or not, they have already set the ball rolling.
Right.
People are now thinking, okay, we can't trust you. You might come up with this issue again tomorrow. So let us start talking. So those who were not talking before.
And now they found their voices.
They found their voice, and they are now talking.
Right. So again, because Ajibola mentions the pause, which Donald Trump did mention, but only last night, again, the BBC reported that Donald Trump again says Chinese-made smartphones and other electronics will not be exempt from tariffs, adding that they are simply moving into a different levy buckets. And so now he's saying that even if they were to rescind their decision or look at whether or not they were going to halt or alter the tariff issues, Chinese-made smartphones and other electronics will still remain on the tariff level or be taxed on another level. Now, so when you have things like this, again, moving different merchandises into different bucket lists, aren't you also creating a problem for your own economy, even though China may also start looking for bigger markets as against, you know, depending on the US as a global market. So again, as much as Donald Trump might want to rescind his decision and look at this like a failed, which of course he doesn't always want to agree, that is a failed project anyway. But then now that he's saying smartphones and other electronics will still be on the tariff, but then on a different level, does this seem like, again, is faltering on his move here?
See, the distance between insanity and genius is measured only by success. When you try to do something and you're not successful at it, you now start looking for ways of ameliorating it. You know, for all I care, it is face saving. Because you have already set the ball rolling. People are now aware of what you can do. So, and that is what they're doing. Regardless of the buckets that you put them in, it will still go back to the American consumer. Unless you are now saying, we want to create a blockade. We don't want Chinese goods again. If you say you don't want Chinese goods again, then it will come back to the Apples of this world, the Teslas of this world, and all of them. So you now ask them, you have to look for alternative markets to produce, or you produce your Apple. Unfortunately, you don't have the required skill and the infrastructure for that. So America is in a quandary, as it is. But I tell you, just give him some time. he will say he's not doing anything again. And he will go back to status quo.
And then start looking for how to save face and negotiate.
They will have a meeting. They will have, eventually you will have a meeting with Xi Jinping, and they will say, oh, it was very successful. They won't say anything there.
Nothing about the meeting will be made public.
They will just say it was a very successful meeting.
And then
it
you can go.
He will just say, you know, his normal stuff, and
saving.
then face saving, and then everything will continue.
So Ajibola asked you a question earlier, and I think, you know, let's just quickly go back to revisit that, where he talked about, is this expected to open doors of opportunities to other countries of the world, especially Japan, because Japan is also an Asian country, and they are side by side with China. And so if China is at a loggerhead with the US, is this a way for Japan to also capitalize on this, or do you see Japan aligning with China because they are
already aligning? There's going to be a meeting of Southeast Asian countries. They are, and
then they will maintain a common front.
No, definitely. They are now going to trade more. You know, the problem is they were not trading
as an entity.
They were not trading with themselves most of the time.
Right. They were trading.
Most of those countries were trading with the US. But now they now see some sense in it that, come, we cannot be in the same block and not be trading with ourselves. You know, like NAFTA, which is now US, Mexico, Canada agreement. It used to be North American free trade agreement. You know, so they set aside the NAFTA, created the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement. Now Trump has set that one aside and introduced tariff. And all those countries too, they had already introduced their own. In fact, Europe has lined up their own tariffs that will cost about $20 billion. They have already lined it up. So they only had to pause because America too paused. So any day America resurrects it, they will resurrect their own too, including that of Canada. They will resurrect it. So the thing is, all these movements from Donald Trump is to find a way to save face. So he will not act as if I'm capitulating. What he will do is he will say, I've had a couple of meetings with those people, and those meetings they were very successful.
And then
Elon Musk did a lot to talk to this one do something.
The Dodge.
He will say all that, and you know, everything will be fine thereafter.
Okay, but why trigger the tariff war when you know that America cannot work in isolation when it comes to world trade and investment?
I believe sincerely that he was not aware of how other countries have scaled up. He probably thought
he has still had his mindset.
Yeah, he was still having that mindset of the all-powerful
America.
That when America coughs, all of them will start sneezing, or they sneeze, all of them will start coughing. But he has now discovered that many of these countries now have a leverage that they can use against them. And you know, the bad thing is that when you have, you know, little countries all over the place, coming together, united and saying, we can also hit you.
Yes.
You know, it's like an elephant and some
giants.
An elephant is there, all powerful.
Right.
And then you have termites and bees and all of them all around
coming together
to say, we will fight you.
We want to fight you. Oh.
And you know there's no way you can fend all of them off.
Right. they might be small.
No, they are small.
But
the damage that they can do, you will not have peace.
There's power in number.
Oh yeah. so all of that. So now I'm sure he must have realized that his team will be sitting together and be saying, look, how can we
save our face?
Yeah, how can we do damage control?
Right.
And make sure that, see, very soon, I mean, he has since discovered that even Godzilla did not have green skin. It was paint. So he has to do something that will make it look like, okay, we have negotiated, and everything is normal
over.
again. That was my aim from the beginning, and I have achieved it. Make America great again. And then the slogan will come, and then that's
And
all.
then it will go.
And then everybody will move on.
And everybody will be happy.
Most of the countries now will now start having a rethink. Because as I said, it set the ball rolling.
Right.
And all of them will now have a rethink and say, look, we better arm ourselves
Okay.
against such decisions in
Right.
future.
Right. So as the countries are having a rethink, let's bring it to the continent, the African continent, as well as Nigeria. But before I do that, the UN trade, UNCTAD, that's UN Trade Development, is calling on Donald Trump to exempt the world's poorest and smallest countries. Of course, we did hear that about 28 nations are also part of those that will be faced in this tariff. Nigeria is also there. And so how do we begin to leverage on this, on the home front? How do we begin to tighten our belts at ensuring that we also scale up? Because now this conversation has been how much in years China has done their homework properly, and the Asian nations all done their homework properly and have scaled up. Is there anything that the continent, and by chance Nigeria, can learn from this ongoing trade?
Oh, they're already learning. You see, the higher the monkey climbs, the more we see it's behind. When you see things moving in a particular direction, you should know that, okay, you also need to start shifting. That's why for Nigeria, thank God for this government, because we are no longer living a life of subsidy. So that alone has already shifted our mindset,
Okay.
that we need to do some extra work. And it's not magic. You have to begin somewhere. We can't go back to, the stage we were in the
The
early,
lie we were living.
Yeah, we were living a lie, like in the 70s when
The boom, the oil boom.
we had the oil boom, and the Gowon came out with the Doji Awards, double salary, and then said you should give everybody 2 years arrears. So everybody dumped their productive activities. We were doing a lot before then in terms of productivity. But immediately, people started having petrodollars and the rest of it. They dumped everything. And you know the value of the Naira then. It was higher than the dollar.
The dollar.
So why should anyone engage in productive activity? You have money. You can import everything from the biggest machinery to toothpick
Right.
at low cost. So they started importing.
And we forgot that
We forgot everything.
there's manufacturing at home.
We forgot our manufacturing. That's how we forgot manufacturing. So it was no coincidence that by 1974, we had our first fuel queue. Because of the Doji Awards, many people bought cars, they bought everything, but we didn't scale up.
Just like America.
Just like America. So there are consequences for whatever we do.
Right.
So it's a mind shift that we now have, and it is working for us. So you'll see that we are better prepared for this kind of scenario than what we had before. Because we are used, people say hardship, cost of living crisis and the rest of it. We are getting used to it. And we are looking for alternatives. So if we didn't have this plan, barely like 2 years ago, it would have affected us more, because we wouldn't have prepared our mind that this kind of thing is coming. I mean, what do we export mainly to the U.S.? It's crude oil. Crude oil, maybe cocoa, and some other inputs for fertilizers and the rest of them. But the main thing is crude oil. So if they say they don't want our crude oil, I mean, we do business of about $6-something billion in terms of crude. So if America says they don't want that again, they won't say they don't want it, despite, because they are huge consumers, of crude. Many people don't know that America is the largest producer of crude oil in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, when people talk about it, they think of Saudi Arabia and the rest of it. No, it's actually America.
And the store.
But because of what they consume, the American, industrial complex consumes a lot of well. In America, you can hardly go out without driving.
Sure.
Unlike UK,
where
they have
the public transportation.
one of the best public transportation system in the world. In America, you have to wait. It's either you drive out or you wait for people that will drive you out, or you call Uber. So they are used to that kind of wastage. They didn't develop their public transportation system, because America depends on the states, the cities, the counties to do everything. So they hardly have a federal government that is,
controlling
over.
Exactly.
So it's difficult for them to coordinate at that level. So everybody believes they should put most of their cars are fuel guzzling. So they will always have need
for crude.
To produce, despite the fact that they are the largest producer of crude in the world. They consume a lot. So unless they can find an alternative to that consumption, they will still require crude.
Okay, on a lighter mood now, what do you think will be going on in the minds of Americans now? Whether we like it or not, they are going to feel the heat of this tariff one way or the other.
Yes, they are.
So what do you think will be going on in their minds now, re-electing Donald Trump?
Hey! I think it was Mahatma Gandhi that said, an error does not become the truth by reason of multiplied propagation. And the truth cannot become an error just because nobody sees it. It's reality check for them. Because before the election, we were hoping that something would change in America, but it didn't. It didn't change. So it showed that America was not ready for the kind of change that we were
hoping for them.
Exactly. So they didn't. But it's reality check now. They have Donald Trump, and they have to live with it.
For the next 4 years.
For the next 4 years. If something does not happen at the Congress, if it does not do something wild, that even Republicans will now say, no, we've had enough of you.
You need to go.
We had enough of you. So it's a reality check for them that, look, maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we should have just been consistent. But
they will learn to live with their mistakes for the next 4 years.
That's the way democracy is. You have to live with it. Even if you elect a dog, the dog will be there for 4 years unless something happens.
Because American politics is also very funny.
It's very funny.
Because
the good thing is that in America they have their structures that can correct itself. So it's difficult for that. I had somebody talking about a third term for Donald Trump. I said, don't bother yourself. It never happened.
He was talking about it for himself.
Yeah, it's never happened. It's not something that he just loves to
trend.
He loves to trend. He loves to make people's temperature go up.
Very funny.
And
he was impeached the last time, but he still stayed in office.
That's his persona. He's not someone that you will have there and there will not be action around him.
And he has an ally in Elon Musk.
Oh, yes. That's another. Maybe we'll give them about a year or two. I think they'll be in trouble. Because both of them are.
They are temperamental.
They're eccentric. You can just get to a point and say,
you know what?
You are fired.
And I'm saying Elon will also have a response for him.
Yeah, he will have a response. But he will know that his response must be tempered because
he's still the president.
Yeah, he's in power.
Okay. I had to leave this conversation here this morning. Thank you so much, Lukemon Owolabi, for finding time to be with us on the program today. But just like you said, the Americans are actually, facing their own. Like a friend, I think I shared it. Then remember, I said, okay, we are facing our own tipping too now.
Yeah.
I said everybody will be okay last.
Will be all right.
Everybody will be fine. All right, that's the much we take on this side of the table this morning. We'll take a quick break. When the conversation returns, Adebimpe will be here with her Lagos conversation.